if you study history and you look at the rise and fall of superpowers, you will find that the leading indicator on the way up is economic power, and the leading indicator on the way down is loss of economic power. And any country who can't put their finances in order will lose economic power over time. And right now, we've been fortunate because we have the world's largest reserve currency. And that gives us an ability to borrow at cheaper rates, trade on better terms, and impose economic sanctions. But the fact is that we're seeing some early signs of investors not being happy with our current financial condition and our lack of progress in addressing it. In particular, China and Japan are reducing their appetite for our debt. A variety of countries, the BRICS and others, are looking for alternatives to the dollar as a means of trading. And you know, if people lose confidence in our ability to put our finances in order, things can change very quickly and not in a positive direction. Let's talk about the last 2 or so years. The federal government spent way too much money because it was following, during 2021 and 2022, the flawed and failed modern monetary theory, which said deficits and debt don't matter as long as you can borrow your own reserve currency, unless and until you have excess inflation. Well, that was followed in 2021 and 2022. And that, combined with loose monetary policy, where the Federal Reserve kept interest rates too low for too long, and where they bought a significant majority of all the new debt that was issued. So we were self-dealing our own debt. We weren't going to the market to try to get real interest rates, resulted in excess inflation to the point where prices have increased 21% in the last 3.5 years, and much more for things like food and energy and insurance and housing. And you know, in addition to that, you know, we've seen we've seen loss of confidence, you know, in the dollar. And so if people don't think it matters, if we don't get our finances in order, we're going to have a lot worse problems with regard to inflation and other matters like that in the future, because you can't print your way to prosperity.
What could happen here? I mean, a lot of this is based on psychology, isn't it? It's perception. Once the perception changes, it's not usually gradual.
Well, first, as has been said by others, how do you go bankrupt? First slowly and then suddenly. And that's the situation here. I mean, the issue is all about confidence. You know, as long as we can maintain confidence of our lenders and borrow at reasonable rates, then we have more time. But it doesn't mean that we have unlimited time. And by the way, today, the fastest growing expense in the federal budget is interest. And what do you get for interest? Nothing. You know, we're spending more on interest than we are on defense. We're spending more on interest than we are Medicare. And based upon current projections, it's going to be our largest line item within the next couple of decades if we don't end up changing course. So another point that I would say is that every major federal fiscal and monetary agency has said for several years now that we're on an unsustainable fiscal path, which by definition means we've got to change. And so the real question is, what do we need to do and how do we get it done? And I'm happy to go into that too. So
I'd like to hear that. Go ahead.
Well, I think we need 3 things in order to be able to restore fiscal sanity and sustainability. Number 1, we need a president who's willing to make it a priority and lead the way on making tough choices to create a better future. We haven't had one since Bill Clinton. And so far, the 2 major presidential candidates in the 2024 election have not provided any framework for how we're going to put our federal finances in order and what are we going to do to save Social Security. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we need a constitutional amendment that will limit how much debt as a percentage of the economy we can take on. The debt ceiling has been a dismal failure. It hasn't constrained the growth of government. It's a statutory provision which doesn't bind current and future Congresses. It can be changed at any time. The only thing that can bind current and future Congresses is a fiscal responsibility constitutional amendment. Debt to GDP is a pro-growth way to go. At the same point in time, it says you got to solve the problem, but it doesn't tell the Congress how to solve the problem. How much of it is reducing mandatory spending, how much of it is reducing discretionary spending, and how much of it is through increasing revenues. But it says you got to solve the problem. And I'm involved in efforts on that, which we can come back to if you want. And then number three, we need a statutory fiscal sustainability commission that learns the lessons from Simpson-Bowles, which was not statutory, one that will engage the American people with the facts, the truth, the tough choices, solicit input, make a package of recommendations that will be guaranteed an up or down vote in the Congress. Everything would be on the table, but not everything is equal. There's a bill that is passed on a bipartisan basis out of the House Budget Committee. It's called the Fiscal Commission Act. It passed over a year ago. It needs to be passed by the Congress. And in addition, on the constitutional amendment, there is a House concurrent resolution pending in the House, HCR 24, that demonstrates that Congress should have called a convention of states to propose a fiscal responsibility amendment as far back as 1979, and they never did it. And it calls on them to call that convention. And if they do not call the convention, I expect that several states will file suit against the Congress, probably by the end of this year, to force their hand.